Well, while most of us have a bad travel story, for some of us, an accident overseas can mean financial ruin or worse. And an increasing number of Australians have been seeking assistance from our consulates overseas, but there's only so much our government can do.
Well, for more on what is and isn't covered, the importance of a good policy and how to avoid your holiday turning into a horror story, we're joined by Michael Blackwell, who's the Head of Claims at Travel Insurance Direct. Michael, thanks for talking to us. It astounds me that people will go on holidays to a different country and not have travel insurance.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just think that it's I'm going on holiday, I've saved up all this money and I'm just going to go. They forget that, once you buy that ticket, you could injure yourself in Australia and still be able to claim on your insurance. So you're missing out on a really good gap of cash that you can get back as well. And not to mention the benefits that you have when you're in Bali, US. If you have a medical problem there, medical cover in Bali is nowhere near like Australia. US, it's so expensive that you really can't afford it, and you just cannot afford it in the US at all.
Well, a lot of the time you hear the catch cry, if you can't afford your travel insurance, you can't afford to go. It's relatively small in comparison to the cost of what your trip might be. What advice would you give to people, say, when they're looking at getting travel insurance, when they're going on a trip? What do they need to look out for? Because there are common things that are included and a lot of things that aren't included that people might not be aware of in a standard contract.
True. Very true. Look, our policies have what we will pay and what we won't pay. There's no fine print. It's very clear. It's on our PDS, it's on our websites, it's on our Tripwise app. You can find everything there. But you just need to be mindful that if you're going on a skiing holiday, but there might have to be an option to cover that skiing, because skiing, Australians are terrible skiers. We had 81. We had over 81 repatriations from Japan just last season. I'm not including this season yet. So, and that's to cover your surgery. That's to get you then on a flight back in a business class seat, which they're not cheap. So you got to think about those things that might not be covered if you just don't have a read of it properly.
So some of the other things that aren't covered that people probably don't know about is if you're influenced by alcohol. But how do you decide how much alcohol someone has had and what influence that has had on the injury that they've had?
Yeah. But it's a good question, because everyone wants to have a beer when they're on holiday, or a nice little cocktail in the sun, and that's perfectly normal. But if you're going to go crazy, like full moon parties, drinking the buckets, and no one actually knows what they put in those things anyway, so you've got to be mindful that would you be doing this at home in Australia and think that you could get behind the wheel of a car and drive? If you're pretty sure you couldn't, then you probably had too much, and that's where we look at it kind of like 0.05. You're probably too intoxicated to make a rational decision, and so we want you to have fun, we want you to travel safe, but we can't cover everything. No. It's just not cost effective.
We are a nation notorious for travelling, for backpacking around the world, for seeking adventure. What are some of the events around the world that insurers just would not cover?
So the running of the bull is always a great example. We just wouldn't. It's just too dangerous. Someone's going to get hurt, usually gored by a bull, which just doesn't sound like fun anyway. There are other things, so paragliding, hang gliding, parachuting, those things, which are kind of fairly risky sports to do, and love to do them, but yeah, we just can't. It's just not. Again, it's just not cost effective. Travel insurance policies are really quite cheap. $50 for a 30-year-old for a week in Bali, but you'll get coverage for unlimited medical expenses, an air ambulance home if something untoward happens to you and you need that trip home. So that can be anywhere up to $100,000. So.
We mentioned earlier about the increase in the number of people who are seeking Australian consular assistance. There is a limit to how much the Australian government can help you when you're overseas. I mean, there are sort of reciprocal health arrangements with some countries like the UK, but you can't always just rely on the fact that the government's going to bail you out if something goes wrong.
Yeah, true. And, the consular, unless it's a major event, like Nepal earthquakes, those sorts of things, if it's a big event, they'll get their boots on the ground and they can do a much better job than the insurance company can. However, if it's just something small, like finding a hospital, not that it's small, but things like that, you've lost your passport, all that sort of thing, we can actually direct you to the nearest embassy. Our assistance team are there 24/7, they're available, they'll give you all the advice you need to hey, make yourself safe, get to the nearest medical facility, and then they can then monitor you medically as well. The consulate will, it will do that if you don't have travel insurance, but they won't pay your medical expenses. They'll put you up for those. You will have to pay them back.
We have heard in the recent days that where legal action was brought against an insurer because they wouldn't cover someone with who developed a mental illness. Insurance companies don't have a great track record, so to speak, with wanting to pay claims. I suppose it's a business. They don't want to pay money out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we did mention fine print. How does someone make sure that they are covered? How does someone make sure that they have got the right policy?
Yeah, so as I said before, there is no fine print in our policy. It's a what we will pay and what we won't pay. It's very clear. There's a big bold heading that says what we will, what we won't. And it's a matter of reading it thoroughly. You can read a summary of benefits, which will tell you what you're going to be covered for, but then just make sure you read what you won't be covered for. But it's really pretty much common sense. So if you lose a phone and you don't report it, or if you leave your bag outside the toilet and walk away from it, it's just not, it's common sense.
It's about being sensible, isn't it?
Yeah.
We are going to have to leave it there. Michael Blackwell from Travel Insurance Direct, thank you very much for your time today. Some sage advice there.
Great.